The A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie Burris, joined as always by the great Zach Reagan of A to Z Sports fame, Twitter fame. He's got a lot of people to follow him on Twitter. You should go do that too. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us here on the Big Orange Podcast. We talk everything balls every week here on the pod, and if you want to listen to that on the regular, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed. Rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe. If you do subscribe, you won't miss any of our episodes when we drop them on Mondays. Speaking of Mondays, big announcement here. The people that are watching live already know this because they are here with us. The show is shifting to 7 p.m. Eastern time on Mondays now. We had a schedule shake up there, and so we're going to be more in like prime time. So maybe more people can watch that way. We'll see. But 7 p.m. Eastern time on Mondays, and you can drop in on the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel, subscribe there, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, yada, yada. And join us, and you can comment and literally be a part of the show. It's really, really fun. We like to go back and forth with everybody in the comments. It's a great time. So hit it up. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, A2ZSports.com for the stuff Zach writes on the internet. And now, let's get to it. Zach, we're going to talk about this more in depth at the end of the show, man. But just a beautiful weekend of Tennessee sports, because there wasn't much Tennessee sports overall. But there was baseball and there was softball. And I want to give a shout out to both. Again, we're going to go in depth with baseball with the crazy resurgence they had over the weekend. But baseball just smacks Vandy right across the face. And it was so fun. And then softball comes back down from, I believe, 9-3 against Florida last night. Giant comeback. They win 11-10. Right at the end there. It was beautiful. What a weekend. What's up, Zach?
Yeah, I think we've been conditioned to expect something bad to happen. And with baseball, it felt like it had been happening all season and like there was little hope for this to get turned around. But it truly is a new era in Tennessee athletics. I mean, the bad times don't last for very long. So if you think a month or two down or baseball being down was bad, I guess we'll take that now moving forward.
It really is kind of hard to believe some of the stuff that's happened in the last few years. I mean, what a time to be alive as a Tennessee fan. But it's been a great time, and we're going to talk about everything that's happened in the last week, not just baseball, but of course, all the other news. But first, I got to tell you about the great sponsors that keep this show going. Superbook Sports. There's no better place to wager on your favorite sports than Superbook Sports. Go to superbook.com and download the app today. Superbook Sports. Rattle and Snap Tennessee whiskey from Log Still Distillery. Make your own luck, just like Tennessee football's fast-paced. Rattle and Snap offense with Rattle and Snap Tennessee whiskey, then Omaha Steaks. Get $20 off your order of perfectly aged steaks, juicy burgers, and decadent desserts with our promo code VOLS. That is VOLS at checkout. Omaha Steaks. And finally, Farm Bureau Health Plans for better coverage, better rates, and better service. Go to fbhp.com/ATOZ. That is Farm Bureau Health Plans. And on today's show, it's going to be, just to give you a quick rundown, we're going to talk NFL draft. That's going to be our topic right up top. The NFL draft, of course, is this week on Thursday. It's going to be a heck of a time because the Tennessee Volunteers could have 1, 2, 3 picks in the first rounds or first 2 rounds. We're going to talk about where we think guys might go, kind of give you a preview there. We're going to talk recruiting. There was some recruiting news, not just for football, but also for basketball. Big news for basketball. And we're going to give our take on kind of the structure of the team now that Barnes has made some pretty nice pickups from the transfer portal. And then, as I already said, we're going to finish with some baseball. But first and foremost, with football now, we are deep into the already. I mean, it's only been a week since the Orange-White game.
Got a long way to go.
Oh, I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm so excited about this football season, but it is so far away now. It just, I mean, what is it? April 24th. That means we have
a little over 4 months.
I don't want to talk about it until we have football back, but hopefully baseball. This is my hope. Baseball, that this is the flip, that baseball makes the resurgence. We can actually have like good things watch for a few months. Maybe we'll actually get what we want there and have some stuff to talk about a little deeper into the postseason here. We'll see. But going from there, football, the NFL draft Thursday. I'll throw it to you, Zach, because you texted me today and you said, I have written so much about this that I am ready for the NFL draft to be over. So you know what you're talking about as far as this goes.
I mean, maybe I know what I'm talking about. I'm not sure anybody knows what they're talking about when it comes to the draft. In fact,
you are the preeminent expert, and anything you say, people should take as Bible. Is that correct, Zach?
No comment on that. But
if you are wrong, you will be excoriated on this show. We will shame you.
Well, that's going to happen then.
Yeah, but
I saw a quote today from a like a front office exec or something, and one of those anonymous quotes that says like, I have no idea what's going on. I know the mock draft writers have no idea what's going on. Most NFL teams don't know what's going on. There's so much information flying back and forth. Nobody really knows what's real, what's not, what's groupthink, because you get a lot of these consensus takes on some of these top prospects that's just basically repeating what the other analyst was saying, and you kind of fall into that groupthink mentality. It can be tough to really come up with your own opinion of a player. I think there's a few teams out there, obviously, that do that really well, the teams that excel in the draft. But for the most part, the draft is always a surprise. There's always a few surprises on night. And I think this year's draft will be one of the crazier drafts in recent memory, just because there's not a lot of consensus top players as far as, even with the quarterbacks. I mean, we think Bryce Young's going to go number 1 overall to the Panthers, but that's not set in stone like it is in some years where a month or two before the draft who's going to be the number 1 pick. So between that and teams trading up, it's going to be a wild Thursday night and really the whole weekend, I think.
It definitely is, and we're going to kind of give our predictions as to where guys will go there. And before we dive into that, because Zach has collected all of the predictions for where Tennessee's top guys are going to go, and we're going to discuss all that right after I tell you about Superbook Sports. Make 2023 the year that you beat Vegas. Superbook Sports gives you the chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Las Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms, no guys across the pond setting lines for American sports, just the best team of odds makers in the business behind the counter at Superbook in Las Vegas. Plus, Superbook features some of the best odds boosts and promo bets you will find anywhere. Download the Superbook Sports app today, right now, or visit superbook.com and start your battle against Vegas. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. That is superbook.com. I am fairly certain you can bet on the NFL draft. I'm not sure. I haven't looked on Superbook in terms of if that is an option for you. I guess I could look at it now. But always tons of fun stuff to go and bet on Superbook. So go download that. Now, Zach, let's start here. Everybody wants to know Hendon Hooker. What are their predictions for him? Because I feel like it's really been sort of all over the place. There's predictions in the first round, predictions in the third round. They're very concerned with the injury. They can look past the injury. What have you seen?
So it really seems like over the last couple of weeks, he's been trending up quite a bit. You're starting to see him pop up more in the first round in mock drafts. Now, back in January, February, when the mock drafts or the serious mock drafts first started kind of filtering out, he was second round, third round, some of those areas. You saw teams like maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Seattle Seahawks, some of these teams that could use a long-term answer at quarterback, especially the Buccaneers. Saw him mocked there a lot. But over the last couple of weeks, I've seen him like going to the Titans at 11, the Vikings at, I think they have the 23rd pick maybe, the Buccaneers again, the Seahawks again. You've really seen him, it's just soaring lately. And it's really because of the impressions that he's made during these interviews and the way that he's impressed teams. He knows what he's talking about. He knows football better than people think he does. He's excelled at doing the board work, being able to call the plays and draw out what Tennessee was trying to do, what kind of concepts maybe NFL teams might run. He's been very impressive in that, the way that he takes in information, just his general demeanor. I mean, we saw it when he's at Tennessee. That's no surprise to us at all. So that's really helped him a lot, just the way he carries himself. And I think NFL teams put more stock into that than maybe a draft analyst. I know somebody like Mel Kiper that's been really big on Will Levis. I think Will Levis might be his favorite quarterback in the draft, and it has nothing to do with anything off the field, the way he carries himself, none of that. It's straight up just the ball coming out of his hand, the ability that he has, the size. I think that's kind of an old school way of thinking, because we've seen in recent years that it really takes, it's not so much the talent. Obviously, you have to have talent. You have to be able to throw the ball into tight windows. You have to have a decent arm. You have to be able to move out of the pocket, especially in today's game with some of these freak edge rushers that we see in the NFL. But guys like Joe Burrow, like, he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's not the fastest guy out there. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not even really Aaron Rodgers, but he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL today, just because of the way he can lead, how smart he is, the way he plays the game. And there's other quarterbacks out there like that too. Hooker's got a lot of that in him. So I think NFL teams will like that. They're going to trust him in their locker room. Whereas with Will Levis, you don't really know. With Anthony Richardson, there's just so much there that you're trying to project as to how he'll play at the next level. You're not really sure. With Hooker, he's a little more polished, has a little more experience. I know the age is a factor in the ACL and all that stuff, but I don't think that's scaring away teams as much as we think. Now, the caveat there is that we started hearing some stuff like this about Malik Willis around the same time a year ago. Saw him projected high in the first round. I remember there were mock drafts that had him going to the Carolina Panthers at number 6. Pittsburgh Steelers, I think they had like the 24th pick. They ended up taking Kenny Pickett. You know, he ends up falling to the 3rd round to the Titans at number 86 overall. Obviously, there's a lot of misinformation that was put out there about Malik Willis. I don't think that's the same thing that's happening with Hendon Hooker, but I do think there might be a hint of that, like as far as like, going up, number 11 overall to the Titans. I don't think that's probably going to happen. I think he has a chance to sneak in there at the back end of the first round, maybe as high as to the Vikings, where they pick up in the early 20s. Saw a report today that maybe the Titans would be interested in trading back. If the player they want at number 11 is not there, they trade back to maybe try to get Hooker later in the first round. That's something that's been out there. Todd McShay put that out there today for ESPN. So there's some different scenarios there that, could end up with Hooker being a first-round pick. It would be the first time a Tennessee quarterback's been picked in the first round since Peyton Manning in 1998. And really only like the 4th quarterback I think Tennessee's had selected, 4th or 5th. Since Manning, T. Martin, Ainge, Jonathan Crompton, Josh Dobbs. I don't think there's many others out there.
Yep. God, that would be so amazing to have him go in the first round. Not just obviously for the historical piece of that. That's really cool. But just for how great of a person Hendon Hooker is, I want to see him get rewarded.
Well, it feels like he got robbed because of that at ACL, right?
Exactly.
Like, it feels like he got robbed of the last game against Vanderbilt. He got robbed of the Heisman Trophy, being on the stage. If not winning the award, I think he would have been right there in that conversation, because outside of Caleb Williams, it really wasn't even that close with some of the other guys that were on the stage. So he got robbed of that, gets robbed of playing in the Orange Bowl, which I know he's happy that Joe Milton got that opportunity, and Joe Milton kind of silenced a few of the doubters moving into 2023. And I know just the person that Hooker is, that he's probably happy that Milton got that opportunity, and he's a selfless person, but he's got robbed of so much there at the end of his Tennessee career that at least give him this is kind of the way I feel about it too.
I feel like there's sort of 2 possibilities that are the most likely with Hooker, and I really hope it's the first one and definitely not the second one. I feel like he could be the surprise that gets taken right at the end of the first round, and we would all just be so ecstatic for him. And if it's not that, I'm afraid it's going to be I can't believe that he's been sitting for this long. How are they letting Hendon Hooker go? Oh, I like Malik Willis last year. It seems like there's kind of a quarterback like that most years in the NFL draft, just somebody where people are like, how has no one selected this guy? And they end up falling to like the 3rd round when you thought they were going to go a lot higher. It just feels like those are the 2 scenarios that we've seen the most get floated around. And please, please, please just let it be the first. I just want so badly just some kind of dream scenario for him, because he deserves it. The man himself. This is not for Tennessee fans. Like, it's amazing for Tennessee fans to finally have another quarterback taken high, something like that. But just Hendon Hooker as a man and the things that have happened to him, the kid deserves it. He absolutely deserves it. Anything good that comes his way, he has brought that all on himself, and just should be rewarded for that. But it really is just a giant toss up, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super confident about him going in the first round or not going in the first round either way. I think it's 50-50 on that, but if he doesn't, I don't think he falls out of the second round by any means. I don't think this quarterback draft class is not deep enough for him to fall that far down the board. If those other 4 guys go first round, which we know Bryce Young and CJ Stroud will, pretty sure Anthony Richardson will. Will Levis, you've kind of heard some negative talk about him. I really don't know. Maybe the Colts are in love with him, which I know Titans fans would love.
Please.
Maybe they do something back to him. Maybe they take him where they're sitting at right now. They're number 4, I believe. Who knows what happens with him? But beyond those 4, then it's Hooker, and there's not a lot of other great options. So I think a quarterback needy team like a Tampa Bay, like a Seattle, maybe Detroit, who feels pretty comfortable with Jared Goff going into 2023, but he's not really the long-term guy. Maybe they take a chance on Hooker to try to develop him and see what he has. Something like that could work, but I don't think he falls past the second round.
I hope not. And it's a crapshoot. We'll just have to see where it is. And obviously we're going to respond and react to everything that happened on next week's show. But I obviously would love for any Tennessee player to be taken by the Tennessee Titans. I'm a huge Titans guy, along with being a huge Tennessee guy. And right now, it seems like an option that's on the board for the Titans to go to the next player is Darnell Wright. And on that point, so I actually looked up on Superbook what they have for the NFL draft in terms of betting. They have the over-under for where certain players are going to get taken. I was looking through. They have Darnell Wright on here, and it is over-under 11.5. Again, go download Superbook Sports. You can bet on this. Over 11.5. That's his draft spot. The 11 would be the Tennessee Titans at the moment. They could trade. Is he taken by the Tennessee Titans, Zach? Are you over or are you under?
My gut, I mean, that being the Titans pick notwithstanding, my gut says to go under that because he's purely a right tackle.
Yeah.
We know he's had those left tackle reps, but it's pretty obvious that he's best suited to play right tackle, and I think that's what a team will target him for. Early on in the draft process, I thought he was the perfect fit for the Cincinnati Bengals. They got issues at right tackle. La'el Collins is hurt towards ACL. Don't know when he's going to be back. They signed Orlando Brown to play left tackle, to move Jonah Williams, a left tackle, to right tackle. He then demands a trade. So they don't really have a clear option there. I thought that would have been a perfect fit. Geographically, he's close. I think Cincinnati was the closest team to him growing up there in West Virginia, where he grew up on the western side of West Virginia. And initially that felt like, okay, him sneaking into the first round, which is kind of what people thought he might do. But over the last 2 months, his kind of like Hendon Hooker, his draft status has just shot up. We've heard all these great things. It felt like forever that nobody was talking about him shutting down Will Anderson. I know we talked about it during the season. At the beginning of the draft process, it felt like that kind of got overlooked. Then Will Anderson made those comments about Darnell Wright being the best offensive tackle he played against in college, and that kind of boosted Wright's draft stock a little bit. He's been impressive. And the Senior Bowl, the Combine, had a really great pre-draft performances. I think he'll go top 20. He might even go top 15, but it's just such a weird range of teams in that area. I've seen the Patriots maybe at 14, the Packers possibly at 15, the Steelers at 17 could be very interested. Wouldn't be surprised if they traded up. That's actually a scenario I saw floated today, is that they trade up with the Titans to draft Darnell Wright. The Titans trade back and maybe take Hendon Hooker later in the first round. So that would kind of be a pretty crazy scenario with us discussing Tennessee players, but he's the one surefire first-round pick for Tennessee. He's not going to fall out of the first round.
Yeah, 100% agree. As I said, you can go bet on where he's going to fall in the draft there on Superbook Sports. But I would be so ecstatic. I mean, I read an article this past week. I don't remember exactly where it was, where, Wright's a potential Titans target there. That'd be phenomenal. If it's not him, please give me Hendon Hooker. That's the dream right there. Even if it, in my opinion, might not be the smartest move that the Titans could make, but regardless, that would be so cool. Moving on the list, Jalen Hyatt. What have you seen? This is another one where I've kind of seen some disparate things where some guys are just like, oh, he's only straight line speed. And then other guys think he might be the next great receiver. So what have you seen for Hyatt for Thursday night?
Seems like he's really fading into that second tier of wide receivers over the last couple of weeks. I'm not as convinced that he'll be a first round pick. Maybe the Chiefs pick him with the last pick in the first round. I think that would be his best fit, would be with Kansas City, because their offense isn't similar to Tennessee's. I'm not trying to say that, but they're the team that has the most similar concepts to Tennessee, that gets creative, gets innovative, tries to create some mismatches. We saw it in the playoffs at times. Plus, playing with Patrick Mahomes has a big arm. They don't have the speed guy necessarily that they've had in years past. Mecole Hardman left in free agency. They lost, Tyreek Hill last year. So they need somebody. They need somebody to fill that role. I think Jalen Hyatt would be a great fit there with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. They might have other needs, though, that they want to address before wide receiver. They might feel like they can get somebody later. So if it's not the Chiefs, you've seen some other teams, him mocked to some other teams in the first round. The Chargers I've seen, which I think would be a pretty good fit with Justin Herbert. He could go out there and join Josh Palmer, another former Tennessee wide receiver that's in Los Angeles. I've seen the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sure there's plenty of Cowboys Vols fans somewhere out there that would enjoy that. I could see him slip into the second round, though. I don't think he slips outside really the top 40, maybe just barely, but that seems to be the range. Just because the uncertainty with his size. He's not very big. He's not, he's 6 foot, barely 80 pounds, 75 pounds. He's not going to play a lot heavier than that, probably. He did look like he tried to put a little bit of weight on for Tennessee's pro day. You could tell that he was playing a little heavier than he did at Tennessee. I don't know if that's good or bad for his game, but those types of wide receivers can be tough to project at the next level. They tend to get injured a lot. Someone like Tyreek Hill, he's a little bigger. He's thicker. He has more mass. He can kind of hold up some of those hits. He's a different type of player. So I think that would be the concern with Hyatt. Then, of course, the route running stuff, which maybe that's justified. Maybe it's not. I mean, he did play a year in Jim Chaney's offense, which is a little more traditional. So he's got some knowledge of playing in a different type of offense and having to receive play calls, different types of play calls, and not just reading the defense and these deep choice routes. So we'll see where he lands. I wouldn't be surprised if it's second round, though.
I think he goes second round. It just seems like that's been the conventional wisdom. And of course, we all know that essentially none of these guys really know what they're talking about. At the end of the day, it's just guessing. But yeah, that just makes the most sense. And so that is definitely my guess from everything I've seen with Hyatt. And on the same point, I saw actually a Titans reporter that I follow on Twitter. He was saying that Cedric Tillman is a better NFL prospect than Jalen Hyatt. And he kind of said it on Twitter this week as just like, this is going to be controversial. But Cedric Tillman is a better NFL prospect than Jalen Hyatt. And here's the thing. I agree with that, I think. Because, and I think most Tennessee fans would probably hang out here. I think they're similar. Jalen Hyatt has all the potential in the world. Put his nose to the grindstone, I think the kid could carve out an excellent NFL career. But Cedric Tillman, you just look at the traditional NFL wide receiver. More physical, bigger. He's really great on 50-50 footballs. He just has all of those things that they really look for in the NFL. And the projections that I've seen are second or even third round, I want to say. And if he goes down to the third round, somebody's just getting an unbelievable value there. In my personal opinion, when he gets completely over all the injury and all the everything, that kid, he has all the potential. It's all there. But have you seen anything particularly interesting with Tillman in the draft?
No, I saw that comment. I've seen him mocked in the same range. I've seen him sneak into the first round in a handful of mocks, not many. Most of them, like you said, have been second or third round. But I agree. I think he's the better NFL prospect. He's bigger. He has great body control, elite body control, I'd say. We've seen the way he can adjust the balls in the air, and that is a hugely valuable trait, one that quarterbacks will love. You want to throw to a guy that can make a bad throw look not so bad, because those are going to happen even in the NFL. He's not as fast as Hyatt, obviously, but he's not slow by any means. I think you're in like a 4.52 or in the 4.5 range at the combine, which is it's not burner speed, but it's good enough to play in the NFL.
4.54 is what's listed at the thing I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's good enough to play in the NFL. No, he's not going to be, like you said, a speedster that's just blazing past guys. And that wasn't really his game at Tennessee. I mean, he had some of those plays. We saw some of those in 2021, but he's more of he's just more of a traditional wide receiver. He mentioned about Hyatt playing 1 year in Chaney's offense. I mean, Tillman was in Chaney's offense for 3 years. He was in Heupel's for 2 years. So he has plenty of experience in different systems. I think that's a positive going for him. I mean, that if not for that 2022 year, he comes out 2021, he might be a first-round pick coming out of last season. He was the leading returning receiver in the SEC this past season, and then he got hurt. If he doesn't get hurt, are we even talking about Jalen Hyatt in the same way? Is Jalen Hyatt even declared for the draft? I mean, maybe he's coming back to Tennessee if Cedric Tillman never gets hurt, because it just increased his opportunities and made him become the focal point of that offense, where it was previously Tillman, at least in the passing game. So I think, yeah, he could definitely be a major steal. He's another one that I think the Bengals could possibly be interested in if they can get him in like the third round, because T. Higgins is a good chance that they don't. I know there's talks that they want to extend him. I just don't see how it happens. You got a Joe Burrow extension coming, Jamar Chase next offseason. You can't wrap up all your money in those three big offensive weapons. You got to have money to spread around to other positions of need, and their offensive line issues have been well documented. So that could be an interesting landing spot. Really, he could fit in just about in any offense, I think, though, just because of the type of player he is. He's a move the chains type guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one that I really want to see rewarded after this past season. You know, he just kind of got a tough hand, and I think hopefully it's a second round for sure. I mean, and no further than that. But I could see if he falls, I mean, that's going to be an incredible value for whatever team picks him up. But we'll finish with this. Byron Young, dude, has been getting hype from some of the analysis that I've seen as being just like a real under the radar potential value pickup for whoever can get him. Specifically, I mean, the stuff that I've read is just that his work ethic jumps off the page. Obviously, we all know Byron Young. He was a manager at the Dollar General, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then went to junior college. Then from junior college, got picked up by Tennessee, and just kind of has this cool meteoric rise that he had, and then now has potential to get to the NFL, and that's so awesome. And I think that's got to be attractive to teams, because if you can get a dude who's a workhorse like that, that's, you know, it's one of the best traits you can possibly have, because they're going to come in with a business mentality and get better at the game of football for you. And so I don't know what you've seen in terms of his potential, the round where he might get picked. But what have you seen about BY?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of second round projections with him. I've seen the Chicago Bears quite a few times. I think that would make sense. And they're kind of a defensive first team under Matt Eberflus, the head coach out there that came from the Colts. I think that would make a lot of sense. He's an athletic guy. He ran like a 4.43 or 4.41 in the 40 at the combine, had a 11-foot long broad jump, I think, which was the highest in his group that day. So very athletic. Didn't have a ton of production at Tennessee. I think that will probably be a negative against him. I think he like 12 and a half career sacks over, or somewhere in that range, over his 2 years at Tennessee. So that probably a little bit of a negative, but I think he's a guy that in the second round, the way edge rushers, I mean, they're so important. If you can hit on one in the second or third round, it can really change your defense. I think it's worth taking a chance on him. So I think his athleticism, his work ethic, his story, I don't think he falls much past the second round at all. Maybe early third, possibly, but I think he'll be a second round pick. I mean, there's even been some right after the combine that thought maybe he should be a first rounder, that he had that type of talent. I don't know if NFL teams will agree with that or not, but, you know, he's in that first couple of rounds.
I mean, just think about. So if kind of the projections that we've talked about with these first five guys all come to fruition, Tennessee would have 5 dudes taken in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. 5. After a season where 30 dudes went in the portal and a new coach took over, and all obviously we all watched it. What more could you say? An 11-2 season in year 2, 5 dudes taken in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. I think it's extremely likely that it's 5 dudes taken in the first 3 rounds. I don't want to say that's guaranteed. You never know. Things can happen. But if it's 5 guys taken in the first 3 rounds, much less the first 2 rounds in the NFL draft, and after an 11-2 season, I just another feather in the Josh Heupel miracle worker cap there.
What's even more impressive, and this is actually what I was fixing to say here. Ben Hall pretty much says it for me. It's a massive number for recruiting because it means we develop dudes who were thought to be duds, and that's exactly what I was going to get to. Hendon Hooker was an afterthought at Virginia Tech. Jalen Hyatt didn't have a great first 2 years at Tennessee. Cedric Tillman had produced almost nothing under Jeremy Pruitt coming out of Las Vegas. Byron Young, obviously, you talked about his story, working at Dollar General, thought his football career might be completely over. I mean, these are guys that they weren't supposed to be going in the early rounds of the draft at all. Like that wasn't supposed to be the case. Even Darnell Wright, after his first couple of years at Tennessee, should he really have been a 5-star? Like, he's been solid, but he hasn't been that elite offensive lineman. They moved him to the right side in 2022. He's the best offensive lineman in the nation. So, I mean, just the development of this staff across a multitude of positions, quarterback, edge rusher, offensive line, wide receiver. It's been incredible to watch. If they get some dudes in the secondary moving in the same direction, I mean, watch out, I guess. But yeah, it's just really a testament to the development that's happening at Tennessee. It's been something that we've talked about for Tennessee fans have talked about for 10 years, the development. I mean, we saw so many talented guys go to Tennessee and not succeed. In fact, The Athletic did a little not investigative, but did a little research into programs, how they develop talent, the amount of 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star players that end up going to the NFL. And Tennessee did not score well on that at all, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that's followed the program over the last, like we said, 10 years, because you've seen a lot of those guys just fail and not live up to the expectations. I mean, like Khalil McKenzie, for example, a 5-star lineman that you could play on defense or offense at Tennessee. And I can't remember if he was drafted late, but never really, had an NFL career. You think about, what if he would have had a coach like Josh Heupel on this staff at Tennessee? Where would his career be now? So I think that's definitely something that recruits want to know. If you're a 4-star guy, even if you're a high 3-star, you're thinking NFL, and you want to know how to get there. Of course, you want to go to college, win a championship. That's 3 to 4 years of your life. You're thinking about that next 10 to 15 years, hopefully. And can Tennessee get me there? I mean, they're showing so far that they can.
What more proof would you need? Seriously, if that happens, the 5 guys in the first 2 rounds this year, and then Heupel produces another 10-win season, I will put it this way, and I don't necessarily say this to put pressure on Heupel, but I think it's just true. If that all happens, there's no excuse to not start recruiting at a level near your Georgias and Alabamas. There's really no. Yeah. You're right there. You're getting guys drafted like they do. You're getting season results like they do. So let's recruit like they do. Because, if you're, and to that point, if you're getting season results similar to Alabama and Georgia, but with far less talented players, what'll happen if you get those talented players? I want to find out. I want to know. So,
well, it's what it's going to take to beat Georgia, because you're going to have the athletes to beat them.
Yes. But time will tell. We're just going to have to see how it all turns out. The rest of the guys on the list for Tennessee, Jeremy Banks, Jerome Carvin, I think they're going to be later round guys.
I think both of those go. Yeah, I think they both go 6th, 7th round. I think Jeremy Banks can be I think he can provide some immediate special teams value. I don't know how well, if he'll ever really play like a starting linebacker type role in the NFL. I don't know if he has the pass coverage skills for that and some of the other attributes needed to play that position in the NFL, but I think he can be valuable in a special teams way. And I think Jerome Carvin could be one of the biggest steals in the draft. He's got position versatility. He can play either guard spot. He can play center. He was one of Tennessee's main leaders last season. I think I don't know why he wasn't invited to the combine. I think he should be like a 3rd or 4th round pick. I think he's showed that he's talented. I think he might have allowed just 1 sack all of last season, if that. I don't know what teams are seeing there that we're not seeing. Maybe there's something with the measurables that they don't like or something with the film. I'm not claiming to be a draft analyst or a front office, NFL front office member that goes in depth and watches every snap and can really evaluate these guys in that sense. But just based on what we saw at Tennessee, he seemed like an NFL offensive lineman to me.
I agree. I'll finish this segment by replying to Greg here. He says, who do you think will be the Tennessee Titans' first round draft pick this season? I already said I want it to be Darnell Wright. I think this has been my theory since the NFL season ended for the Titans. I think they're just going to go offensive lineman, pack it in, and they're going to flop for a quarterback next season. They're going to.
It's probably the best approach. I know it's a tough for a fan to live through a season like that, but
it's going to
build
suck.
your offensive line and wait for a Caleb Williams or somebody that you know is a little more of a sure thing, maybe Drake May, and then then you're in business. I don't know if this draft has that quarterback. I mean, if Bryce Young was six, that's a guy for sure.
Yeah.
If Hooker maybe had played in a more traditional offense. I mean, I don't love those questions about the offense, but I do understand it because you have to prove that you can run those plays. You have to prove that you can run that offense. I mean, you absolutely have to prove that. I believe that Hooker can, but ultimately you still have to prove it. And CJ Stroud, maybe he's that guy, but even he's not like the surefire can't miss Joe Burrow type prospect. So, it's a tough draft to be in if you need a quarterback because you're trying to make the right decision, and there's a few decisions there, and inevitably 1 or 2 of those are going to be the wrong decision.
No doubt about it. All right. Well, we will now go from the NFL draft to something that, obviously, in our opinion, we've been saying here is kind of tangentially related. Recruiting. We're going to talk about a little bit of recruiting news that Tennessee had this week right after I tell you about our next great sponsor, Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200-plus locations across the state of Tennessee. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Thank you to them. Support Farm Bureau Health Plans because they support this show. We really appreciate it. Now to recruiting. Tennessee had a little bit of movement here this week on the football recruiting front. We're going to talk about all the recruiting for basketball. That's going to be the next segment. But this is football recruiting. They picked up Jeremiah Hurd, who's a 3-star defensive lineman prospect. This dude's really interesting because he's not rated on ESPN or Rivals yet. He's I would say the definition of under the radar, but it's not because he hasn't shown out yet. It's because, according to the stuff I read, this dude started playing football last year. He's like new to the game of football. And I believe there's potential for offensive or defensive play, although he is listed as a defensive lineman at the moment, but potentially an offensive lineman. He is 6'8" and almost 300 pounds. 293 is what he's listed on On3's website. This dude is a monster. But again, a 3-star player on On3. He is the 95th defensive lineman in their rankings. Again, just a 3-star, but a fascinating pickup, I would say. This one's interesting just because of the nature of the kid, and he just started playing football last year, supposedly. What'd you think of this pickup, Zach?
Yeah, I think immediately you have to wonder. We talked about this before. Like, you can only have so many hidden gems in a class that you can count on, right? And you have to land the 4-star, 5-star guys. But what Josh Heupel has proven and his staff have proven to be good at is evaluating these guys early in the process, identifying them as players that they think will not necessarily rise in the rankings, because if we're to believe coaches, they don't pay any attention to those rankings, which I don't think any of us believe. But they basically think this guy is going to be a 4-star caliber guy. I mean, that seems to be the way they're recruiting. I think they know that they can't beat Alabama and Georgia for certain players just yet. And that's not a slight against Tennessee. I don't know that there's anything you can magically do to win those recruiting battles. Alabama, Georgia, they have so much recruiting equity that's just really hard to compete against. You're just going to have to beat them, stack these 11-win seasons on top of each other, start getting those results more frequently like you talked about, then you can win those battles. Until then, I think you have to identify guys early in the process, trust your evaluations, and see if they become what you think they'll be. They've done that a couple of times already. I assume this is what they're going for with this pickup.
Yeah, we've said it a bunch just in the last few weeks with the players that they've been getting. At a certain point, you just have to beat Georgia. Like, that's just something that teams can just do. Nobody did it this last season.
I mean, it's so easy if you're Kirby Smart to just say, I mean, they haven't beat me since 2016, my first year in Athens. Why? What can you say against that?
Yeah, I mean,
at least with Alabama, you can sell the win this past season.
Tom says it here. We need luck. There's a monster down in Georgia. I mean, yeah.
But this Hurd guy, if he can play, he is the type of body that you need to go up against Georgia, because that's what they're getting. So if the ones they're getting are already rated as 5 stars, you're hoping this guy develops into that.
I mean, 6'8", 293. The dude certainly has the physicality, but will he turn into the player that you need? At this point, I don't want to say it's all hope. I think he can be a good player as a 3-star. But there is certainly just an element of hope here where you go like, well, I hope he develops. We'll just have to see.
It'll be fascinating to watch his rise in the recruiting rankings, if he does rise over the next 6 to 8 months, especially over the summer.
Going to be watching it close just because of kind of how interesting he is as a prospect. He's going to be a real fascinating one to keep an eye on. But outside of Hurd, you had Amari McNeil, defensive lineman, hit the transfer portal. This is not – I always feel bad giving this take because Amari McNeil is going to go somewhere at just a slightly lower level, and he's going to find playing time, and that's what he wants, and that's what he should go get. He just wasn't going to play this season at Tennessee unless there were injuries, unless somebody fell off. He just wasn't going to carve out that spot. He got transfers came in and hopped him reportedly. Just your Omar Norman Lotz and guys like that. It just wasn't. The room was a little too stacked for him, and so
though he did reportedly have a decent spring at least. It's not like he was just a terrible player. I think he probably going to be hard to crack the rotation, like you're alluding to there. But he wasn't just some cast off that they had no hope for type guy.
No, not at all. I mean, and it takes away a depth piece, which I mean, we talked about all during spring ball. That's the best thing that's happened for Tennessee football this offseason is adding legitimate depth. But I think they still have it even with this transfer, and the transfer portal still open. You could pick up another defensive lineman. I don't see a huge need there, but it certainly wouldn't be a bad thing. I wouldn't hate it. I don't think they will, but we'll see.
I don't think that they lose. I don't think they drop a game on their 2023 schedule because Amari McNeil's not on the team anymore.
Exactly. It's not a brutal loss. It's certainly not good, and I don't want to act like that at all. It's not good, but it's not devastating unless you have just a number of injuries on that defensive line, and that guy, he just ends up being a guy you really, really needed. But he just wasn't going to be a guy who's going to be a starter ultimately. And so there's that in terms of moving in the transfer portal. And we were just going to wrap up this conversation about recruiting and transfer portal by just saying, is there at this point, we've seen spring ball, and now you have until essentially August to potentially get more guys from the transfer portal. Is there anything that is calling out on this roster where Tennessee has needs? And we saw Josh Heupel, I believe it was at the Tennessee Caravan. They've been doing the tour across the state of Tennessee where all of the coaches meet with fans at this event, the Tennessee Caravan. And Heupel mentioned, do you have the wording there? You told me before the show started, but he mentioned something about potentially looking at the offensive line for transfer. What did he say?
And when he's in Nashville, he said, I think we can continue to add maturity at the offensive line position in particular. And specifically, we think he's talking about the offensive guard position, because it seems like the tackles are pretty much figured out, that you're going to have John Campbell probably at left tackle and slide Mincy and Gerald Mincy and Jeremiah Crawford over to right tackle. Kind of a similar situation with Darnell Wright sliding over last season, which hopefully, that raises their level of play. But
I hope so.
When it comes to the interior offensive line, you have Javonte Spraggins, you have Cooper Mays that will be at center. That other guard position is a little bit up in the air, which is a bit of a surprise because we thought the transfer from Texas, Andres Carriage, was going to kind of take that position and run with it. Doesn't really seem like that's been the case. I mean, you've even seen like Ollie Lane mentioned as a possibility there. It seems like they would like to have some more options there. So it wouldn't be a total shock then, especially with Heupel's comments, if they go looking for an offensive guard in the next week or so before the portal closes.
Not at all. And that's the one to me that seems the most obvious. Seen some stuff floated around about potentially wide receivers, which from the portal, which seems interesting. Because you look at that room and you don't necessarily see like, oh yeah, we definitely need to pick up a wide receiver after you already got Dante Thornton. And you're pretty much, unless there are injuries, the dudes that are going to be your starting wide receivers at this point. So that's interesting. What was the deal there?
Yeah, I mean, GoVols 24/7 actually reported, I guess today, that Tennessee had been linked to TCU wide receiver at some point this offseason. Jordan Hudson, Hudson didn't do a lot at TCU last year, caught 23 passes for 170 some yards. But I think it tells you that maybe Tennessee isn't quite comfortable. Maybe it's not that they're not comfortable with their wide receiver room, but there's a lot of youth beyond those top four wide receivers that we've talked about with Thornton and Square White and Brew McCoy and Ramel Keaton. Once you get past there's a lot of talent, but there's not a ton of experience. So Hudson from TCU, he would come from I don't want to say similar offense because TCU is more air raid inspired, but it is a non-traditional offense. So it is something that maybe there's some stuff that translates there. So I could see him being a decent fit. I don't know if it's like a top priority for Tennessee by any means, but we saw last season how quickly wide receiver depth can be tested. So it just means that Tennessee wants to make sure they're not caught off guard or caught with a sudden weakness in 2023 that they didn't, maybe they had a chance to take care of before the season and they didn't. It looks like they're trying to avoid that type of situation. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that because I'd like to see some of those young guys get a chance. I think some of them, like Square White, got chances at times this season where everybody's really excited about him moving forward in 2023. I think you got to give some of those guys a chance, but I also respect Heupel making sure the roster doesn't have any holes. I mean, I'm not going to say that Tennessee has championship expectations being put on them by the national media in 2023 because they're certainly not. They're not the front runners. Most people aren't, predicting them to even make the playoff with Hooker and Hyatt and Tillman and all those guys moving on. But in Josh Heupel's mind, in Tennessee's facility, they're going for it. I mean, they're going into 2023 expecting to go 15-0, and they're operating in that sense. So I can respect that part of it if they are looking to add another wide receiver.
Absolutely, because this is really an opportunity, I think, when you look across the landscape of the SEC East this season, there is the potential for it to basically be a two-team race. And it should be Tennessee and it should be Georgia. And if you can bolster your roster as much as possible, I think that opportunity is right there for you. Where that game, I mean, the game against Georgia is in, I believe, the beginning of November.
It's in November.
Something like that. And there is legit potential. A lot has to happen before this, but there's legit potential where that game's for the SEC East. And that was essentially that way this season. Ultimately, we didn't know Tennessee was going to go get their doors blown off by South Carolina. But that game, thankfully, South Carolina game's in Neyland Stadium, and I think Josh Heupel is going to be out to slaughter.
Well, they definitely will not be taking South. They won't be taking South Carolina lightly, which is exactly what happened last season. We heard Tennessee's players, various defensive players, pretty much straight up say that they did not think that game was going to be that close.
Exactly. And so, I mean, you get past Florida in the swamp, which that's huge. I mean, that's massive. You haven't won in the swamp in however long. But you get past Florida in the swamp, you get past South Carolina, you're looking straight at that, because you can lose to Alabama and beat Georgia and you still win the SEC East. If I'm thinking correctly, I believe that would be the case. So you're looking straight at that game and going, all right, the pass here. And so that, oh man, you have to just be thinking this is like an NFL team, like the Titans a couple years ago. What they should have been doing is bolstering everything for that Super Bowl run where the Rams a couple of years ago, where they just went, balls to the wall. It's all here for us. We just got to go and take it. And ultimately they won that Super Bowl. I don't know that Tennessee is relative to college football that good this season, but I think you have the potential, because there is a fairly decent chance that things just come down to that Georgia game, and that game's in Neyland Stadium. I mean, it's as winnable as it's probably going to get with Kirby Smart there. So
yeah, especially breaking in a new quarterback. Although that is the one downside of that game being in November, is by then that quarterback has a year of experience. Carson Beck, I assume, would be the guy there. And Stetson Bennett, we make fun of him, but he was productive at Georgia. He did what he had to do to win games. He made some huge plays against Tennessee that really broke the defense's back. And regardless of what you think of him, he was a good college quarterback. He was obviously playing with some great athletes, a great offensive line. I don't think he has that same type of success at a school without those assets on the offensive side of the ball. But either way, he did his job, and he did it pretty well at Georgia. Won 2 national championships. It's really hard to argue against him. If he had done that same thing at Tennessee and was the same quarterback, he'd be a living legend forever at Tennessee. So I can understand why Georgia fans, love him so much, despite his off-field transgressions, which have been pretty bad this spring. But aside from that, yeah, you don't have him there. They've lost some key players. They're going to reload, of course, like they always do. But the main thing is that the game is in Neyland. And I'm not going to say that would have flipped the game last season, but it would have taken all those false starts out of the equation. And that would have helped Tennessee's offense a lot. And what they did with those opportunities, I don't know. I mean, we'll never know for sure, but it would have been a lot more winnable without that. So obviously that's going to be huge for Tennessee in this game.
Yeah, and with that in mind, to go back, that's why you got to just be scouring everything you possibly can to glue up any possible hole. And you go, the potential is here. Obviously, last year, you won 11 games when nobody thought you would. Who knows what could happen now that you have even more depth than last season. So I think there's definite potential we see more movement in the transfer portal. Obviously, we will just have to see.
Yeah. And somebody mentioned tight end. I mean, that could definitely be another position of need, especially Ethan Davis with the collarbone issue should be fine for the 2023 season. But as good as he looked in the spring game, it was just a spring game. It was a very vanilla offense. He's still a true freshman. Very high on him. I think he has superstar potential in the SEC, but true freshman tight ends usually don't produce at a high level. You got Jacob Warren, who is, he's kind of a role player type guy, not really a go-to guy in the passing game, knows his job, is a huge asset for Tennessee. He's like another coach on the field. He basically is a tight ends coach on the field at this point. We've heard Tennessee's coaches say that multiple times this offseason. As far as in terms of production, I wouldn't look for a huge uptick in his production, which leaves, McAllen Castle's the new guy. It does feel like you could add some depth to that room for sure.
Absolutely. So we'll obviously keep an eye on it. If any movement happens there, we're going to cover it. But we got to move on and talk about more transfer portal news, but this time for the basketball team. This was, I don't want to say we spoke this into existence, but we talked last week about how there was no news with Tennessee basketball. And then by the time we came back on this week, all the news had happened with Tennessee basketball. So we'll break it down in just a second after I tell you about Omaha Steaks. Omaha Steaks is rewriting the book on burgers with an all-new handmade texture for the juiciest home-style burgers you have ever tasted. Their pure ground burgers are made from single cuts of real aged Omaha steaks. These are truly steaks on a bun, filet mignon, ribeye, New York strip, sirloin, and even brisket burgers. Now is the time to experience the exclusive Burger Perfection flight. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code VOLS, that is VOLS, at checkout to get an extra $20 off orders of $129 or more. Plus, you get free shipping. Order today and try each pure ground burger and sample all the great steak on a bun greatness. The burgers are crafted for a juicier, more tender experience, making your mouth water with every single bite. I've had the regular Omaha Steaks burgers. Haven't gotten my hands on these pure ground one yet. But, I mean, the regular burgers are ridiculous. They're awesome. So I can only imagine how good these are, these pure ground burgers. So don't wait. Go to omahasteaks.com, promo code VOLS, VOLS. Check out, get your $20 off. Orders of $129 or more and discover your new burger obsession. Minimum order may be required. Omaha Steaks, promo code VOLS. Now, to basketball. The newest addition was Dalton Connect. Have we decided what the correct pronunciation here is? But transfers to Tennessee, and there is some serious hype here because the kid seems to be an offensive firecracker, and that's fun because Lord knows Tennessee basketball needed that this past season. What did you think of these transfer pickups this week, Zach?
Yeah, well, first from the Northern Colorado kid, Dalton Connect, however you want to pronounce his last name. We'll figure it out soon, I'm sure. To me, does that signal a slight change in Rick Barnes' philosophy? Or maybe not a change in the philosophy, because I don't think it'll be a huge change regardless. But is it an acknowledgement from Barnes that he did not have the offensive firepower to go make a Final Four? That feels like what it might be to me, because this is a guy that can maybe create his own shot, get to the rim, shot almost 40% from three-point range, average 20 points a game. It feels like the exact player that Tennessee was missing last season, like the exact thing that maybe they make a run if they have a player like this. I like to think that like I said, like it's an acknowledgement that Barnes was missing this piece. So hopefully that boat, is good news for Tennessee moving forward. I think that's a tremendous pickup for Tennessee.
20.2 points per game, almost 2 assists per game. I love that. I hope it is what you're saying. I hope it is Barnes going, okay, we're going to try to put the ball in the basket more next season. Fine, I'll do it. Because I want Barnes to frustratedly change his ways. I mean, we said it all at the end of the season. If you listen to the show back then, this for Barnes to get the best coach to have never won or never, made it to more than one Final Four, whatever you want to put on in there. For him to break that, he's got to have some teams that score the basketball. Clearly. Because you go up against an FAU and you couldn't put the ball in the hoop. So please let it be a little bit of a philosophy change, but who really knows there? You also picked up Chris Ledlam from Harvard. 18.8 points a game, 8.5 rebounds. Again, almost 2 assists a game for Ledlam. This dude seems awesome, too. I love both of these pickups. I think they're great. You also picked up Jordan Gainey, who's Justin Gainey's kid, who's an assistant coach on the team. He seems like more of a depth piece, but I think an important piece because he's also offensive-minded and particularly has in his college career been a really good three-point shooter. So that's nice, too. I hope it points to a little bit of a philosophy change. I think the only downside of this is that what it also points to is that Phillips and Triple J aren't coming back. I think that might be a foregone conclusion a bit there. The fact that you had 3 pickups, assuming Jordan Gainey is a scholarship player.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we got a set answer on that one, but assuming that might be it. I don't know if there's an opportunity to come back. I'd have to check. I don't know what the scholarship numbers are, and I'm not going to act like I do. But
yeah, last I heard, they're pretty much like testing the NBA waters at this point, and they can return if they want. So I don't think it's like Tennessee shutting the door on them by any means. So if with Kamwa transferring out, if maybe just one of them wants to come back, there's still room. If only two of these guys are scholarship guys between Ledlam and Neck, maybe the other two are, because Tennessee got another guy today from the Citadel that's going to fill a walk-on spot, so he's not really in that equation at all. So I think the door's open. Maybe if Phillips or Triple J want to come back, but I think Ledlam can kind of fill the Triple J's role a little bit. He's a 6'6" guy who's not a great 3-point shooter, but he does put up plenty of shots, and he's not afraid to take a shot. But he's a great rebounder, and that was something that Tennessee missed, especially in the tournament, especially against FAU. Got them eliminated from the tournament. It was not being able to rebound. So I feel like, again, that is Rick Barnes trying to fill a specific weakness that bit them in the tournament, which is encouraging because you're targeting things that you weren't good at last season, and that's what the portal is for. And it seems like he's using it the right way and going after a very specific type of player.
I think with Phillips and Triple J, I do think it's a situation. If Julian Phillips wants to come back, they're gonna let him come back.
Yeah,
that's not a question in my mind.
Yeah.
What I do wonder is that there's almost the assumption that they're not, and so that's what these pickups are. I don't know. I'm not behind closed doors there and know the exact situation.
Yeah, I'm sure conversations have taken place.
But Phillips, they would welcome him back with open arms. Make no mistake. The potential is all there if it can be unleashed. Triple J, I think similarly, they would definitely carve out a spot for him, but it does almost seem, I don't know. I do wonder if there was a little bit of like, okay, it's time. It's,
I mean, it felt like that with Fulkerson at the end, right?
Yeah.
With Barnes. I mean, Barnes made some comments like, hey, he's got to decide if he wants to, play or move on or what. He was kind of ready to, I'm not going to say be done with Fulkerson, but I think he was ready to build a team without, trying to figure out how Fulkerson fit into it.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Urosh, where you're like, okay, we got JP Estrella coming in, we got another tall guy coming in. It's time. It's time.
You can't be in college forever.
Yeah, go play in Europe. It'll be okay. You can come back, and we'll welcome you back to the sideline. But there's a lot of moving pieces there before things get completely ironed out. Obviously, we're going to keep an eye on it. But I agree with Ben Hall here. He said all we needed was a consistent scorer not named Vescovi, and we're in the Final Four this season. I mean, exactly. If you had somebody to score down the stretch against Florida Atlantic, pretty decent chance Tennessee makes the Final Four. You would have had Kansas State in the Elite Eight. I think you were a better team than Kansas State overall, and it was right there for you. So
I think you could have beat UConn.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't think UConn was an absolute buzzsaw. Is what it is as far as that goes. But I think there was pretty good potential for Tennessee, for Barnes to finally get that second Final Four. And obviously it didn't come through. And hopefully there is some recognition here, man. What a world that would be if Barnes actually does kind of change his philosophy. I would eat that crow happily, because we have obviously sat on this show and been like, Barnes doesn't change in his ways. The dude is, he just has a pretty hard head and just isn't gonna change. And
nobody's asking for like a just wholesale change. It wasn't that necessarily. I think fans like the way this team played defense. I think they like that aggressive style that just got under the skin of opponents and made national analysts just lose their minds because of the way Tennessee played basketball, like it's 1988 and Detroit Pistons or something. I mean, fans like that, and I don't think they want to see that necessarily go away. It just, the scoring has to be there. Like, yeah, that aspect, you just cannot win a championship without that go-to guy.
I mean, we want to see a Nick Saban hiring Lane Kiffin kind of change. Like, did the identity of Alabama football completely flip on its head? No, not really.
You think Alabama fans cared what their offense looked like? Just win championships.
Just go win championships. Just go look around and be like, oh, the game's passing me by a little bit. Let's make a change. That's all we're saying. And so hopefully that is the case. Hopefully the news comes out about Phillips and about Josiah in this coming week. and we'll talk about that too. But otherwise, anything else with basketball before we finish up with Tony Vitello and the Vols giving us the pure joy of beating Vandy down? But was there anything else with basketball?
Yeah, just here that Ben Hall mentions Alabama seemed to double down on recruiting guys on the all-prison team, which is pretty accurate.
You sent me this tweet.
Yes, their latest transfer edition. He came from Wichita State. Jaquan Walton, arrested in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night, charged with second-degree possession of marijuana, which comes nearly a month after announcing his decision to transfer to the University of Alabama. So nothing major there. It's hard to get to been out of shape out of something like that. It's not like the Brandon Miller situation, but it is kind of, I don't know, maybe an indictment on Alabama's program that Nate Oates does not really seem to have much control down there at this point.
You know, it's funny. I think I saw, let me see if I can find this. I believe Oates kicked him off the team.
Well, there were multiple guns in the vehicle that he was arrested with too, so maybe that is a little sketchier than.
Yeah, quote from Nate Oates: Alabama is no longer recruiting Jaquan Walton, and he will not be a student athlete at the University of Alabama. That's pretty convenient, you know, from a guy who this past season, you know, played a dude who allegedly provided the murder weapon to a murder, but you know, whatever.
Yeah, hey, if you're in the wrong, we've all been in the wrong place at the wrong time, just not.
Oh, haven't we?
Not quite on that, you know, that type of stage.
Yeah, my wrong place at the wrong time is like sometimes I've gone
stuck
to
in
Waffle House in the middle of the night and it gets
Yeah.
a little dicey. Like that's been my wrong place, wrong time. Like I don't think I've ever provided any murder weapons to anybody, but anywho, yeah, Alabama, what a just dumpster fire. I hope that program just comes crashing down to the ground with Nate Oates at the helm. That would be a joy to watch.
Well on its way, it seems.
Yes, hopefully that happens. Not to prey on somebody's downfall, but I think they deserve it. All right, so we're gonna finish up with a little bit of baseball talk, but of course, my favorite sponsor, Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey. You know what goes great with a Tennessee sports victory, and there were a bunch of them over the weekend that you could have raised a glass to. That is whiskey. And specifically, I'm talking about Rattle and Snap Tennessee Select Straight Whiskey. Log Still Distillery has released a new Tennessee whiskey product line called Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey. Named after a long-forgotten game of chance, Rattle and Snap is whiskey for those who make their own luck. There's a 4-year version and an 8-year version. Here's the 4-year right here. I got it for you. What a beautiful bottle. Great in cocktails. Great straight out of the bottle, poured into a glass. You know, you be classy. I've definitely never on video drank this straight out of the bottle, not once. Get it. Not only does it taste great in the glass, I mean, look at this bottle. It's just awesome. Looks great on the shelf. And you can find it across the state of Tennessee. Rattle and Snap is also available in Kentucky, Indiana, and Mississippi. Run, don't walk, and get yourself some Rattle and Snap Tennessee whiskey for those Tennessee victories. And follow them on Instagram at Rattle and Snap Whiskey. Support them because they support us. And now we'll finish with some baseball talk. The boys are back after what I would say was a pretty low point on Tuesday of last week, just essentially a week ago. They got their doors blown off by Tennessee Tech in Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Just a total embarrassment. It was really bad. I think, you know, we were texting some about that game and just like, what in the world is happening with this baseball team? You know, they get swept at Arkansas, barely competitive at all. And then they come home, get blasted by Tennessee Tech. And we were just like, you know, if they don't, it's just not going to happen. There's just not going to be any signs of life here from this baseball team. I mean, what the heck after these last few years with all this fire with Tony Vitello's teams, and they're just going to roll over and die like this? Well, what better remedy to bring life out of this baseball team than the Vanderbilt Commodores coming to town? The series was in Lindsey Nelson, so that, you know, there were friendly confines, but Tennessee just wiped the floor with Vandy. Well, they wiped the floor in the second and third games.
Mm-hmm.
But that opening game, 9th inning, 2 solo home runs to come back from 2 runs down. You're down, I believe, 3-1, and came back. And specifically, what a clutch hit by Dylan Dreiling, if I'm thinking correctly. He comes in, hits a solo home run that ties the game, takes it into extra innings. Tennessee wins it in extra innings. I think Griffin Merritt hit that home run to win. And it felt like 2022 again. You looked and you're like, oh, finally a little bit of that magic comes back, winning on a walk-off home run after you make this incredible comeback. And then they just turned on the afterburner, 17-1 in the next game, 10-5 in the game after that. And are we seeing a turnaround here, Zach? Is this where the season flips and Tennessee gets back on the horse?
Yeah, I mean, certainly they have to go do it against Mississippi State this weekend, but like you said, it definitely felt like 2022 all over again. It had all the elements of everything that we saw last season. The come from behind win, it felt like last season Tennessee was down going into the late innings, 8th, 9th inning. You weren't that concerned. You knew they were going to do something. Maybe they might lose, but they were going to make it interesting. Most of the times they were going to win. So you had the come from behind win there with the Griffin Merritt walk-off that provided kind of a signature moment for this season, especially since it happened against Vanderbilt at home. And then, the 2 dominating wins on Saturday and Sunday. It was definitely vintage Tennessee. You saw some of that same bravado from them that we saw last season. Felt like they were really finding themselves as a team. They were finding their swagger, their confidence, who they are as a team. I mean, these exciting moments and intense reactions and jumping off the mound, being excited. I mean, that's not unique to Tennessee baseball. That's college baseball in general. You'd watch any college baseball game, you're going to see reactions like that. But what we saw from Tennessee this weekend was just genuine. It was just, it was organic. And that's not something, it's something that Tony Vitello has wanted to see from his team, but it's not something that you can just make happen. You can create an atmosphere where you allow that kind of stuff to happen, which Tony Vitello has done. But ultimately, it has to come from the players. It's just like any other team sport. The player-led leadership, when it comes from the players, it works so much better. It can't really come from the coaches. So hopefully it's a sign that that's coming back. But, I mean, after the way the season's gone, I think you have to see it another weekend to truly be convinced. But if they do it against Mississippi State, yeah, I'm going to feel like, okay, they're on the right path here. They can make something special happen. They can get to Omaha and win it all. Like we've always thought that they have the talent to do that. And now they seem to be putting it together. Show that you can be consistent with it. Keep that same energy going into May, and maybe something special happens. And what a story that would be, the turnaround. I think the legend of Tony Vitello would just grow even more. Yeah. Because it's easy when your team's just rolling and hitting home runs to sit there in the dugout and do the interviews and go on MLB Network and be the popular guy. You get hit with some adversity and you get asked some tough questions. And Vitello has been asked some tough questions. He's been asked about pitching decisions and lineup decisions, and he's responded, and he's made some different moves, moving Dolander out of the Friday starter spot, making some different lineup decisions. He's made those tough choices where he's not just on autopilot saying they'll figure it out, they'll work their way out, kind of setting his way. So I've been impressed by his approach. Obviously, it's led to good things this weekend against Vanderbilt. Keep it going this next weekend.
Yeah, the offense exploded in that series against Vandy, and that's awesome. I mean, what was it, 31 runs against Vandy? But I think the thing that stood out to me the most was the defense. Finally, Andrew Lindsay for the second week in a row was good, was really solid. And then Dolander comes in the second game, and maybe his best game of the season. Just really laid it down. And then specifically, Chase Burns in those extra innings. Maybe he's found his sweet spot there. Coming in relief. Dude was amazing. I want to say, was it not 9 strikeouts? I saw the stat. Was it 7 batters retired out of 9 or something like that in that stretch? Like it was just, he came in and was absolutely phenomenal. He kept that thing glued down. And then the actual defense itself, outside of the pitching, finally there weren't all these mistakes. There was one in that third game, kind of late in a spot that led Vandy. Vandy scored 5 runs in that game, but of course you scored 10, so it didn't really matter. But there's maybe a couple of mistakes in that one, but overall you finally cut down on the stupid fielding mistakes, and all the base running was better. Just everything. It was like they suddenly woke up and they're like, okay, we're going to be good now. This, all right, enough of the sucking. We're just going to be good suddenly. And I mean, Vandy came in as the number 4 team in America. Like, don't think that this wasn't some crazy feat.
Oh yeah, they're good.
Yeah, I thought Tennessee had the potential to win this series. In no scenario did I think they were going to sweep, much less sweep where one game they run rule Vandy and then the next one they almost run rule Vandy again. In no way did I think that was going to happen. So that it was just crazy. I don't know exactly what this will lead to. I hope this is the turning point. You have a great opportunity. I think there is real opportunity to sweep Mississippi State. Mississippi State's the lower half of the league. And it's in Knoxville. So plenty of potential there to maybe win another 3 SEC games, and that would just really build your resume there. And I think you have to go to Georgia, who actually just swept Arkansas, but overall isn't that great on the season. So that'll be an interesting one, depending on what exactly happens. But all the potential in the world to get things back on track, get back into the tournament, and make a run. And yeah, I mean, you're right. This would really be the masterpiece for Tony, though, because last season, unbelievable, but ended in total disappointment. This one, if you could turn things around and really create a special team, I mean, is that not almost more impressive? And so that would be so cool. I hope that happens.
As a baseball fan, I feel like these types of seasons are more magical than just a dominate all the way through type season. Because a lot of times those dominate all the way through type seasons, like we saw last season, doesn't always end with a championship. Sometimes it does, but most of the time the best regular season team doesn't win in baseball in general. So these seasons where you start out, you're slumping, you're not, expectations are kind of all over the place and nobody really knows what to expect. And maybe you think the season's lost and going the wrong direction, and the switch flips and you go on a run. Like that's special. Like when that happens, it's a special thing and you catch lightning in a bottle. I mean, I'm obviously not an Atlanta Braves fan, but it's like what they did in 2021 when they kind of struggled for most of the season, made a couple of moves before the deadline. They end up making a run to win the World Series, which nobody really, probably outside of Atlanta, saw coming that season. That's a really special season for them. And those types of seasons are the ones I think are the most enjoyable. So if they can do that and finish this off, obviously a long way to go, long way to go. Got to prove that this is, you're here to stay, that it wasn't just a one weekend thing because it was Vanderbilt and that's an intense rivalry and everything that went on last season with Tim Corbin and the bat checking and all that, maybe that fired them up a little bit, the players that were left over from that and the players that saw it happen. But yeah, I mean, it has a lot of potential to really to turn into one of the most special seasons in all of Tennessee sports if they can finish it off. And they're on the right path now, getting past Vanderbilt. You go sweep Mississippi State, you got a winning conference record. Who knows what happens from there? But you definitely have to win at least 2 out of 3 to keep the momentum going.
Ben asks, how does Vandy compare to Mississippi State? Well, I just looked. Mississippi State got swept by Vanderbilt earlier this season. So there you go. I don't know.
But it's still, I mean, they still have SEC talent. So it's not like you.
Oh, they do.
It's still going to be a tough series. It's not going to be, just easy, you go win every game 12-0. I mean,
no.
This is still the same Tennessee team that lost to Tennessee Tech not that long ago. So they're capable of having a really bad outing, and Mississippi State's capable of having a really good outing. So there's nothing, nothing's assumed by any means this weekend.
Yeah, but State, I mean, that sweep from Vanderbilt was in Starkville. So hopefully that means your chances are pretty decent against Mississippi State. Again, I would say this past weekend, I didn't think there was a chance for a sweep. This weekend, I do, and just go do it because I think, the changes that Vitello has made, maybe they've created a little mojo, and just keep it going. All the pitching, keep it strong. The fielding, keep up the no mistakes. Let's please, because there have been good pitching performances that have been ruined by the fielding or bad base running or whatever it may be. And I mean, the timely hitting, that was another just tons of 2-out runs in this one against Vandy, and then tons of not stranding a bunch of guys, because that has just happened so much this season. So much stranding runners. And they finally just capitalized. And I mean, after the first inning on Sunday, you were up by 9-1 or whatever it was after the first inning. So, okay. I think that is going to be it. Anything else for the good folks at home, Zach?
No, I mean, with baseball, it's all about that clubhouse vibes and chemistry. And once you get that, some of that fielding stuff and 2-out RBI, some of that stuff just happens naturally because that's just baseball. It's a weird sport where mindset is everything. And hopefully Tennessee's found it. Definitely seems like they did. Hopefully they keep it.
I hope so. I've been watching on Netflix Full Swing. You watch this? It's
is that
it's about the PGA Tour.
Okay. I've actually heard it. No, I actually heard about this recently. One of the parents on my kid's travel baseball team was telling me, gave me quite a synopsis about this. It made it sound pretty interesting.
It's great. It's a really well made show, but they do obviously profiles of dudes on the PGA Tour, and it's so obvious, like guys who are total head cases. They just, they get in their own head and they're so negative and they beat themselves up and all these things, and they go out and they play super tight. And it really showcases that because they have all these interviews, like the guy will go play around, they interview them and about their play and about how they're trying to get back. And then they interview other guys. Like they follow Scotty Scheffler for a time, and he's just like loosey goosey. He's just like, I'm just happy to be here. I don't know. This is cool. And it feels like that. And Scheffler's, right now, I think he's like number 3 in the world. Like he's just really chugging. And in the episode, he wins the Masters. It's a whole thing. But it seems like in baseball, that kind of translates also. Like the teams that feel that magic, that just they clear out in between their ears when you can just find that clarity and you just go like, let it all go. It felt like this baseball team has just had so much weight on its shoulders that they just needed to shed, and just that it was, again, like between the ears, it just wasn't there this season. And hopefully now they can just go, look, we're working from behind. We got in a hole. Now let's just go out and let's go see what happens. That's what I want to see happen with this baseball team, because it just seems like that having that kind of attitude, that disposition can work wonders for you. So maybe it can translate over. It's like baseball and golf are just both so mental. So maybe it can help them get out of that slump. See. Let's go. Beat State. Well, I guess who do they have to
midweek Beller?
Oh, Bellarmine.
Bellarmine. Yeah, but what?
Yeah. Bellarmine.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm not saying it. Not after Tennessee Tech.
That's true. I want to say, isn't Bellarmine? That's in like Louisville. Is it? Yeah, Louisville, Kentucky. Yep. That should be a win. Hopefully, it's that easy. Charlie Burris. That's Zach Reagan. Thank you so much for tuning in, for commenting. We really appreciate it, everybody. Again, we're going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern time now on Monday, switching it up into prime time with our new schedule. And so tune in there or tune in on the replay, just as long as you watch. That's all we want. And so that really is it. Rate, review, subscribe, like buttons, notification bells, all the stuff. Subscribe, blah, blah, blah. You made it this far. You know what the deal is. Thanks again for watching, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you guys later.